I will begin, as I always do, with a hashtag joyant. Still don't know if that's a word or not. And a jubilant hello. How is everyone? Doug here with another weekly edition of Stock Market Mutterings, where my promise and guarantee has always been to you that I will take a grope in the murkiness. I will try to make some sense out of the stock market for you, and in the end, whatever I discuss, I hope you look back at the end of the week and say, Doug, did a good job on that one. Thanks for those trades, because we're going to talk about a lot of good stuff. So where I want to start out is with this. Is growth stocks, are they dead? Have we seen the last of this exuberant growth stock rally? I mean, there's definitely a money rotation going on. We talked about this here before. I got the cues up here. But if we look back at just what happened last week, you start out with the Dow. I'm going to pull the YMs up here. Again, this is like the hot sector right now. This and, of course, the IWM making brand new highs here. The small cap Russell. Let's pull that one up real quick. They're just on a tear. You've got the ES here that looks, almost making an all-time high here. Excuse me. I know the SPY has done that, but the futures right here look like that's going to end up hitting that 4,000 that we talked about just about over a month ago. The only laggard that we're seeing here, obviously, is the Qs, where these growth stocks, these internet stocks, these post-COVID winners early on that really had the benefit of coronavirus, like the Zooms, the DocuSigns, all those stocks that benefited from that, are now out of favor. And that makes some sense as money starts to rotate into the travel industry, airlines. I mean, you saw massive moves here out of Boeing. Some of that makes sense. But now you have this discrepancy, which we don't see very often. And we talked about this here, too, in a few videos recently about how I said the QQQs got kicked out of a band. It doesn't normally happen to where, regardless of what's going on, they all seem to kind of run in unison. There can always be a laggard, but maybe it's not moving percent-wise as quickly as another one, but it is still moving upward or downward with the rest of them. The discrepancy here that you see where you've got the three other majors moving up, and not just moving up here, we're talking about making all-time highs. So if you're trading those stocks only and have been, you don't know any pullback. Those that have been trading the beta, the growth stocks, those big winners and those Q-related stocks are basically in sort of some kind of a short-term corrective bear market here, and that's the discrepancy. Now, what I'm saying is that doesn't normally happen and it won't continue. Either the pressure in selling these growth names bleeds into the other sectors and pulls it down lower, or what we're seeing here in the QQQ. Let's just open this back up because I think this is where I'm going with this one today. Where the QQQ will eventually just going through a short-term, normal type of correction, nothing to be alarmed of, and it will, in fact, pull itself back up. Now, I'm going to go with the latter for a couple of different reasons. When you look at this pullback here in the Q, and I think some of we talked about it, it's not like what we're seeing right now is out of the ordinary. We witnessed this here a couple of times, a deep 10 to 12% pullback in this indice over the course of the last 6-7 months. So it's not something that we haven't seen. When you have such high growth stocks, high beta names inside of this, you're naturally going to get more volatility. So when the markets do pull back, this one will be one of the ones that's more aggressive than, say, the Dow, since it's based on 30 stocks, and this one's 100 of a more high beta style. So what you're seeing here is just not something that's out of the ordinary. I think what you're going to witness here is this will find this pivot here that it made a low. It may haggle around a little bit, but I think it still will, barring that we see any sort of hindrance towards coronavirus, re-lockdowns. Maybe that would actually help some of these Q stocks, right? I still see this making its way back up here. Now, where this benefits is, I think, with this rotation, some of this stuff starts to look, I don't want to use the word cheap because that's not fair. Let's say attractive pricing. Now, one of the things that we've always talked about here is that the stock market does this, guys. It will always do the same thing. It will rise prices up high enough till investors and traders say, look, I'm not paying these prices anymore. This is ridiculous. They've moved too far. And they'll drive prices as low as they need to make them attractive again. So that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing a world where you had all of these growth stocks basically going straight up, making 300% moves. And they get to a point where, look, I don't want to pay this much money for it. I don't want to buy Tesla at $900 a share. I don't want to do that anymore. So investors and traders move money from that and go into, other speculative assets, or the market is always forward thinking. So you're thinking maybe 5-6 months ahead of time, And what you're seeing right now is that to where these Dow stocks, these airlines like BA I brought up, these types of stocks have just been destroyed over the last 6, 7, or actually the whole entire year of 2020, from post-corona on. They just haven't really rallied. They've been the dirty industry, and most people understand why. If you don't reopen, then they're not going to be in business much longer. But now that we're seeing positive news, as we talked about, with hospitalizations, deaths, more people becoming vaccinated, whether it's a combination of herd immunity, a vaccine, or whatever that is irrelevant. The market is pricing in a full recovery, or somewhat close to a full recovery, a full travel season. Therefore, you're seeing that money cycle out of those tech names that's no longer needed for corona into those. Makes perfect sense. However, I think some of these may have unfairly been targeted, and we want to kind of talk about this because I think you've got some good trade setups. Good enough here that where I think some of these older, let's call them cult names, meme stocks or stuff like that, could have another secondary type of run to it, where I think you've gotten so low that a bounce is a possibility. I'm going to go into the EV sector here and try to revisit this FUV. And this is just a trade for me because I think there are some stocks that are worth owning for the long term that have been corrected. So like your Microsofts, your Apple, maybe even your Facebook, those types of stocks that pulled back, have quality, have longer term established growth. I think when it comes to EV stocks and some of these speculative assets, you have to be careful because there will always be a leader that moves and bucks the trend and becomes the dominant player, the best of breed, as they say. And the rest of them are just sort of Momo stocks that get some overflow. I kind of think FUV is that way. I've always been that way with my thinking, and I could be wrong, where you look at the EV sector and you have some growth in there. But I also think, you already have Tesla and you already have like a NIO. I think you have some players in there that have long-term staying power. I think some of these like Solo and FUV, that's speculative. It remains to be seen. I just like the chart setup here. I'm not going to make the fundamental claim for it because I don't see it here. But you got a nice little support pivot right here. You have this moving up nicely. I think if you break this level that I have highlighted here, 2140s, I think you can see at least a quick run, if nothing else, a quick parabolic to maybe 30, let's say 35. I'm not going to say that we make it back up to where we were here in this area, but I do think you can at least get some cash flow. So I'm going to look at these here as this. Some of these trades could reward you with the customary V-shaped rally where they come down and they just go all the way back up. Now, we've seen that before in stocks like Redfin and Zillow a couple of months ago, where these stocks did pull back that first round. And not only did they bounce back, but they made brand new highs. I don't want to say that's going to happen in this case, but I do think when I'm talking cash flow, I'm talking about maybe 1 to 3 day rally or a quick 1 day rally. If nothing else, you could day trade them. So I like FUV. Now, another one here I got maybe a little bit different feeling on is ACOM. I think this one's a little bit more fundamentally sound, but I mentioned this before, and I actually have a position in this one right here. Same scenario, just buying it down into a basic support level after a long pullback. It just has not gotten out of the hole yet, to be honest with you. I mean, it's doing pretty good, but sometimes pretty good, you want a little bit more than that, right? You want great. If I open up the chart just a little bigger here, let's get another tool here. There we go. Just like FUV, I think what you have to do now, and you're going to see this too. Let me just kind of back up for a quick second. When you have all these pullbacks in these stocks that go like this, this deep pullback on these growth stocks, you always get a panic bounce. The thing is, one bounce doesn't constitute a new trend. One bounce or a panic bounce or a dead bounce, whatever you want to call it, does not mean that all is good. This is the bottom and we're going back higher. You need to take that with a grain of salt. And normally what needs to happen is these things have to test these levels, maybe trade sideways for a little bit, then re-break these ranges. And that's what I'm looking for here. And you're going to see a couple of charts that look like this. You saw FUV, just maybe a couple of days sideways and then moving back up here, trying to fill in some of this void. Again, just like FUV, I'm not sure the 125 is back on the table at all-time highs or recent highs. But I do believe that there's some cash flow, or some of these have the opportunity to rebound. And I think you're reaching some levels on some of these who have 20 to maybe even 40% corrections, where investors will stop chasing now the parabolic BAs, and they'll look at this and say, I want to own these names longer term. And now they're getting to the pullbacks and the prices that we want to. You can also put maybe this FSLY. I'm just going to breeze through a couple of these here. FSLY. There we go. Same thing. You got the pullback followed by a little pivot. Looks a lot like FUV. I mean, all these charts are looking the same. And there's no surprise that they bounced in. I mean, some of these reached into some really solid support areas here. I do like this one, same thing. Maybe you bounce back up here, maybe you don't, but I think there's some cash flow here to be made. I also just recently picked up an ESTC, this elastic. So the ones that I do have out of this that I'm talking about specifically right now here, so I don't forget, is ACOM and ESTC. I own positions in these, FUV, FSLY, and SHOP, which I'm going to talk about next. I currently do not. Same thing. I mean, you're going to look at, you're going to have a bunch of stuff that's on your watch list that looks just like this. So here you have your, standard support bounce coming in here. This one is a little bit on the laggard side. I'm willing to build a position in this one, but you got a real tiny participation bounce here, like a participation trophy for this one. It needs this range break right here, and maybe we can work out. So on all of these, I feel that you have the same type of setup. So here's what I'm doing here. I'm looking for value that, if nothing else, you're going to get two scenarios. You're either going to see these get a small panic bounce to where they've just been driven down so low and just so beat up over the last couple of weeks. I mean, if you own this thing up here, look at it. If you're somebody, like I said in the beginning, trading growth stocks, some of these, like the PLTRs, some of these other ones, just getting beat up. Every day your account is red on these big growth stocks. So some of these have put in several, week, 2 weeks of straight red, constant selling. And I think you will reach this point, which is the theme of this mutterings, that you're going to start seeing a little bit of money, at least speculation money, trying to come back in here just on a value proposition only. Now, as to whether or not we see those big bounces like we did in the past remains to be seen. But very similar to here, where you have a long drawn-out sell-off followed by a new high. I don't know if we're going to quite get this much, but I do think we have some cash. Which brings me to the last, is SHOP. Now, this has been a beast for I don't know how many years. And when you're around as long as I am, you always shake your head in regret over certain names that you missed, certain stocks that you've watched like they were children grow up before your very eyes. And this happens to be one. I mean, I remember just a few years ago trading this thing in the $40 range, $50 range, watching it go parabolic and saying it needs a rest. And here you're at 1,500 at a high recently. I mean, guys, there's always going to be money like that willing to be put to work at speculation. So if you miss something, always remember there will be another SHOP. There will be another stock. So many of these stocks that we're looking at today that are trading in the 40s and 50s, and maybe even the 100 areas, some of those will rise to the occasion. The cream will rise to the top on some of these, and they will in fact make it to 1,000. It's not uncommon. I know that's like one afternoon for GameStop, but some of these are, anyway, this has always been a reliable bouncer. It's a little bit more volatile. It's not a stock for everyone, but if I kind of just open up the chart here, I mean, you come right down into support, just classic. You're into this box here. I think if you trade above this, you are going to see a very strong bounce move on this SHOP. It's a little bit aggressive. This is super high beta, but if you have the means and the patience, and you see this, you're talking about a stock that could deliver you a few $100 per share gain, and you just don't stumble across those, so pay attention to those. So in a brief review, I've got FUV, I've got ACOM, which I hold a position in, FSLY, ESTC, which I have a position in, and of course SHOP. They all look the same. We're all in the same boat here. You will find stocks on your watch list, and I would advise to just trade them the same way. Look, many of these have come down selling, and they've reached a pivot area and bounced a little. You can always buy them with stops below the pivots, because I do believe that if any of these lose a pivot, then we are in for another wave of selling. But if they do kind of collect themselves at the beginning of the week and you start to see a little turn up, then perhaps we've got some cash to be made. So I'm going to leave it right there, guys. I want to thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know what you're trading. Put it down there in the description box or the comment section. Let me know what you got. If you want me to analyze any particular stock, just let me know. I do appreciate your support. Like the video if you like it. Subscribe to the channel to keep up to date. Or join us in our live trade room. All those details are down in the description box as well. Take care. Until next time, trade well.